The second part of my engagement in the public square, of course, was writing my article on July 6, 2003, suggesting that based on my experience, the administration had twisted some of the intelligence in order to justify the decision to go to war. July 6th, by the way, is George Bush's birthday. We now celebrate that day, each of us in our own way. I wrote it because there was no other way to get the administration to acknowledge that somebody had put a lie in the mouth of the President of the United States, which lie had then formed one of the underlying justifications that there was a real threat to the national security of the United States that required a military response. As we now know, they were briefed 3 times in October of 2002. The first briefing was the Deputy Director of Central Intelligence was in front of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, and in response to a question from Senator John Kyle, he said, "The one area where we believe the British have stretched the case beyond where we would stretch it is on uranium sales from Africa to Iraq." Within 3 days, the Director of Central Intelligence communicated with the White House 3 times, once by phone and twice in writing, in which he said, "I do not want the President to be a witness of fact in this matter because the evidence was weak and because we believe the British have exaggerated the case." In January of 2003, 3 weeks before the State of the Union address, the National Intelligence Officer, in response to a question from the Department of Defense, wrote the following: "The allegation of uranium sales from Niger to Iraq are baseless and should not be used." The administration knew this was not an administrative screw-up in a large bureaucracy. Indeed, what they did is they shopped the allegation back and forth to the CIA until they could find somebody in the CIA who would approve the use of particular language that they ultimately inserted, referring to a British government intelligence conclusion rather than to our own intelligence. The next day, the administration acknowledged the 16 words should never have been the State of the Union address. And that should have been the end of it for Joe Wilson. The White House could not leave well enough alone by acknowledging the error. They felt quite clearly that they had utterly destroyed the person who had said that the emperor was wearing no clothes in this matter. So they decided the way to do this was to go after my wife, and which they did. In embarking on a character assassination campaign against me, they committed treason. They betrayed the national security of our country by betraying the identity of a covert CIA officer. And when they did that, the institutions of governments that have grown up over a period of 220 years to protect the citizens of this country and the Constitution of the United States from just such abuses of power kicked in. And it leveled the playing field considerably. Now they did this for 4 reasons. One, first and foremost, they were stupid. And they were mean, and they operate on the belief that the way you win debates in the public square is by impugning the integrity of your adversary, not by virtue of better arguments or policy positions. All politics, you see it every day. Secondly, they obviously wanted to change the subject from the 16 words in the State of the Union address to Wilson and his wife. How many of you know the name of the person who put the 16 words in the State of the Union address? Let the record show that nobody raised their hand. How many of you don't know my wife's name? Let the record show that nobody raised there's something fundamentally wrong with a picture like this, where nobody knows who put the lie in the mouth of the President of the United States on an issue as important as war and peace, but everybody knows the name of a covert CIA officer for one simple reason: she happens to be married to me. And they succeeded in that. They succeeded in changing the subject from the 16 words to Wilson and his wife. And the third reason was to ensure that those who were beginning to talk about the machinations of the administration to influence intelligence conclusions, analytical conclusions, the pressure that was being brought to bear on analysts, that those who were beginning to speak out would shut up. It was a shot across the bow to the foreign affairs and foreign policy community and the intelligence community. It was a message to them that if you do to us what Wilson just did to us, we will do to you what we just did to this family. Be afraid, be very, very afraid. What I did was I acted on that last phrase of the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I petitioned my government for the redress of the grievance. I thought then, and I think now, that what makes our democracy strong is the willingness of citizens to hold their government to account for what their government says and does in the name of their constituents. And I believe that if there's a lesson in the experience that we've gone through the last 3.5 years, it is that you have a responsibility. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And that means be vigilant and hold your government to account. You have a responsibility. We as citizens have a responsibility to participate in this great democracy of ours. So our story is not one of being victims. Whatever they have tried to do to us over the last 3.5, 4 years has been really mere inconvenience compared to what they have done to this country, and most particularly what they have done to those who wear the uniforms of the armed services. And what has made this country a great country, what has underpinned our leadership, have been the values that we represent. It is the freedom. If there are people who have come to this country who are here today from foreign countries, you will know this better than those of us who are here anymore. It is the dream of this country. The freedom to worship as you see fit. The freedom to say what you want. The freedom to write what you want. The freedom to assemble. The opportunity as an individual to participate fully in your own destiny and the destiny of your country. Those are the values that underpin the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, the UN Human Rights Charter. When the President says they hate us for our freedoms, he's wrong. There may be a few people sitting in caves in Afghanistan who hate us for our freedoms. The vast majority of those who now hate us because we have turned our backs on those values that we promoted for most of the life of this country. That is what this is all about. What we are as a country, how we govern ourselves, how we participate in the decisions that we have to take as a nation.